Now we are stuck in this battle whether the word socialist and secular must be eliminated out from the constitution. Now, what this has resulted in is that it has divided people in opinions. Now, we have two sections of people. One that says that we must favor this change because the word secular and social don't represent Indian culture, and therefore it is the right time to catch and be imbued with a natural or a cultural uh, color. On the other side, we have also a big section which directs attack on it, calling it an onslaught on the soul of the Indian constitution. Now, since we have this problem with us, and it's the right time to have a discussion on this briefly. What I commit in this video, that this video is not going to be political at all, but will try to present a clear or a neutral picture of this overall ongoing incident for all these students to learn how we should deal when these kinds of argument are pushed in the public domain, and therefore it is our responsibility to act more like a mature and educated person or a citizen of the society. Since we have talked that this is all about word socialist and secular, and therefore we have decided to create two separate videos for these terms, socialist and secular. So in this video we will only try to cover the word socialist. In this particular, we will try to know what socialist and socialism is all about. Second, we will try to find out the relevance and irrelevance of this discussion about eliminating the word socialist from the Indian constitution. Third, do we have any specific change in our society if we go and eliminate the word socialist, or would it remain the same? We will also have a look at this particular point. And the fourth, not the least, is that how we should understand this entire scene and to know whether it is a politically pushed motto or it has got something for the citizens. Let's begin with this. So we will start with first the definition of socialism. Now we need to understand first whether the word socialism was ever discussed in the history by any great leaders or a mass leaders for any of the purposes across the globe. When we learn that there have been a number of mass leaders who use the word socialism, and the common among them was that they were pushing benefits for the people who were in large number, but at the same time they were deprived of their basic rights and facilities which were needed for survival. Now what we can presume and assume from this is that socialism is that policy which ensures some benefits and equal treatment for that section of people which has been deprived of the basic rights for over long years. Now since we have concluded this definition of socialist, then we need to come back in the Indian context and to know how the socialist and the word socialism should be interpreted. We will also try to find out its relevance in the later part of this video. Now before that, let me also give you some views of some favorite mass leaders about the word socialism as to how they perceived this very term. So there is a famous name called Martin Luther, who says that the true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is about the presence of justice. And socialism is that tool that ensures justice to all. On the other hand, we have Mahatma Gandhi, who also defined socialism in his own way by pushing forward trustship policy, in which he believes that one who holds or amasses wealth or resources must not consider himself to be the owner of that wealth or resources. He must rather treat him as a trustee and should ensure that it should be properly allocated among the people, right? We have other leaders too, such as Abraham Lincoln. He says that labor comes prior to capital. So he gives much importance to labor than capital. Other famous leader was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, who spoke at a length on this particular point. In fact, one of his works called State and Minorities dealt with socialism. According to him, political right doesn't ensure a complete freedom, liberty, and justice to the people, especially the one who were downtrodden, underprivileged for several centuries. According to him, with political right, one must get social and economical freedom and liberty. And this could only be possible when government ensures ownership on all those resources and also prevent the concentration of this wealth in a particular private person, so that this wealth, natural resources could be properly distributed among the needed ones. So since we now can conclude having all these definitions and their views on the word socialism, one thing could be now confidently accepted that all were positive on the word socialism and socialist. Now what do we learn from it is that it has nothing such bad about the word socialism, and if there is something, that should be perhaps the mindset and the intention of the leader who introduces this term. So it's better to go in depth and to find the intention of the leaders who introduce the term socialist, and will also try to know the intention of the government who wants uprooting this term socialist from the constitution. So let's begin first with the history of the word socialist, especially in the context of Indian constitution. We all know that the word socialist was not introduced right at the time of the commencement of the Indian constitution. In 42nd amendment in 1976, the words socialist and secular were introduced, and thereafter they were placed right on the preamble of the constitution. What is more interesting for all of us, specifically students who have been preparing for some of examinations, to know, and this is basically what that starts with a question. So when the word socialist was introduced in 1976 through 42nd amendment, we should try to know whether any such policy giving a color of socialism were existing before this amendment. And this is important for all of us to know. For this, we need to go back to the time when the constitution was commenced and enacted, right? You will be surprised to know that way before, means from 1976, the time when we have this word as a new introduction of socialist, the policies based on socialism were still existing, and that were existing right from the commencement of the Indian constitution. If you don't believe in, then on my advice, just open the pages of Indian constitution and please try to read article 14, article 15, Article 16, 39, 41, and 43. These are the articles of the Indian Constitution that clearly reflect socialist approach of the Constitution's maker. Article 14 deals with equal treatment to all before law, and all are equal before law, right? This is also called the version of socialism. Now Article 15(4) that deals with employment opportunities for all, better opportunities for all in employment. Article 16(4) deals with all. Now Article 39(b)(c) also talk about that the state should ensure that there should not be a concentration of wealth and resources in private hand, and at the same time they must do something to allocate it in a rightful way for the rightful purpose. Article 41, 43 deal with the benefits of workers, people living in villages. I mean, the act, Minimum Wage Act, was introduced just to ensure that the labor at least should receive the minimum wages for their labor. All these reflect socialist approach, and these were existing right before the word socialist was introduced in our constitution through 42nd amendment. Now the second question that follows up here is that what is that change we are going to have if we even think for a second of eliminating this word socialist from the constitution. But before this, we should also try to know how much relevant it is. Until we find the relevancy of this very overall argument, or this pushing of the government, that why government should think that it should be off and wiped off from the Indian constitution, we cannot really reach to that very core point and the root of concluding it successfully. Now we know that since these socialist policies were existing before the amendment, then what is the need to even bring in such an argument before the public? This is what a question we try to answer for. And if even government successfully eliminates it, what are those changes that the country would have? I think this is my personal understanding that since the word socialist, even if it is eliminated, it is not going to make a big change in the society, because those articles which put oxygen in the word socialist are still intact and will remain intact, because that what reflects the need of the Indian constitution and the society. Many people are arguing that we should not adopt these words socialist as a part of the Indian constitution because this doesn't reflect Indian culture. Now we have to think neutrally and ask ourselves what was the condition, specifically the economic and the social conditions of the Indian society right at the time when the country was independent on 15th of August 1947. We will see that there was a pervasive poverty, illiteracy all around, and therefore the word socialist and the articles related to socialism were planted so that this inequalities could be minimized and major section of the people, including SC, ST, OBC and also general category people, should be well put in the mainstream force so that we could have number of hands working for the economic upliftment. I mean, this is known to all. As long as we have number of workers or employers in the country, our country would continue to grow up, isn't it? So we should not be even doubting on the word socialism and socialist, because it is the needed of the country even now. Now the next thing which we must see is that, does it really reflect any political motive? And apart from it, there is nothing as such which really throws any sort of serious or a grave situation which might arise with the word socialist if it remains to be a part of the Indian Constitution. This is something which we need to contemplate. To my answer, in my opinion, we need to look at it more impartially, and this is only possible when we go back to the time when the word socialist was introduced through 42nd Amendment. We all know that right from the commencement of the Indian Constitution, we had 5-year plan. What were these 5-year plan? It was simply for the purpose of social upliftment of a great number of people. Remember, by then there was no such even introduction of this socialist or secularism, right? But still the government is pushing such social based policies. Now what was the need for the Indira Gandhi to even bring about this word and plant it in the Indian Constitution? I certainly think that it was not more than a political stunt. When the Constitution was sufficient to reflect its socialist approach towards social upliftment and bring in equalities among people from different segments of people, this mere addition of the word socialist doesn't affect a lot. What it affects is the mindset of citizens. So therefore I simply call it a tactics to attract voters, right? And that what happened. Otherwise there was no as such need even to introduce the word socialist in. Now next we have to move to the current regime, why the government is even so much heavily coming on this word socialist. Now don't we think we should ask the government what are going to be those possible changes in the society as a citizens we are going to perceive after this is eliminated from the Indian Constitution? Does it also mean that once the word socialist is all eliminated from the Constitution, then we as a government, as a citizens, may perceive the government to turn to Article 14, 15, 16, 39, all those articles which reflect socialism would also be eliminated in the later time? If it is, then it is really going to be very dangerous for the country, personally I am saying. And if it is not, which is probably the condition is, then I think even this discussion, this argument is all futile, and therefore I simply find it as just a bait to voters to attract them, also misleading or deviating them from the real ground issues. Now this was what I wanted to share with you on this particular point. In the next video we will try to cover the word secular, its relevance and its overall impact on the society, and also we will look at what will happen if the word secular is uprooted from the Indian Constitution. We will also try to look the intention of the government behind pushing this very argument in the public domain. So what we have learned is that the entire scene which is created is not less than a political scene which is only based on political motivation to attract voters and nothing more than that. This is what I wanted to share. Till then, take care, bye bye.